Would you trust your life to two people, only to suddenly find out that both of them were betraying you behind your back? My wife and my best friend. Together. The decision I made after discovering this betrayal will leave you in shock. I always believed my life was stable. Married for over 6 years to the woman I loved, with my best friend always by my side, it seemed like I had everything under control. My wife, Anna, was everything I could ask for, and my best friend, Marcos, had been with me since childhood, someone I trusted completely. Together we shared laughs, important moments, and of course a few challenges over the years. But it never crossed my mind that they, the two most important people in my life, could be hiding something so devastating. In recent months I began to notice small changes. Anna was becoming more distant, and the moments that were once filled with affection and closeness turned into uncomfortable silences. I thought it might be the stress of everyday life, or maybe work-related issues. Marcos also seemed more evasive. Our usual outings to grab a drink or watch games became less frequent, and he always had an excuse, which was unlike him. I thought he might be going through some personal problems, but slowly, these signs started to add up. One day when Anna left to handle a last-minute work issue, I noticed she had forgotten her phone at home. I'd never been in the habit of going through her things. I trusted her completely. But that day, something compelled me to pick up her phone. Maybe it was my intuition or the growing discomfort with their behavior. When I opened her phone, I noticed that her recent messages had been deleted. The conversation history was wiped clean, as if someone had hurriedly erased everything. That discovery set off alarm bells. It was not like Anna to delete her messages. It bothered me for days, but I still didn't want to believe it could be something serious. Yet, the doubts kept growing. I decided to pay closer attention to the little details. Sudden outings, discreet phone calls, and how Anna seemed increasingly evasive every time I asked her about her day. Then, one night, everything came to light in an unexpected way. Marcos invited me out for a drink, something we hadn't done in a while. I thought we'd finally have a chat like old times, but he seemed different, nervous, more cautious. I tried not to overthink it, but as the night went on, he slipped up in a lie. It was something small, but enough to trigger all my alarms. He said he had been home the previous night, but I knew he had been out with Anna. It was the final piece of the puzzle I needed. The weight of the truth hit me hard. That same night, after returning home, I waited until Anna fell asleep. I went through her phone again, and this time, I found a part of the chat history she had forgotten to delete. There it was, the proof I didn't want to find. Messages between her and Marcos, filled with secrets and meetings they had carefully planned for months. Everything was right there in front of me. My world fell apart. This wasn't just any betrayal. It was a double betrayal. My wife and my best friend, the two people I trusted most, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. The anger mixed with the pain was unbearable. I couldn't believe they had done this behind my back, shattering everything I believed about trust and loyalty. What hurt the most in that moment wasn't just the fact that they had betrayed me, but how they had managed to keep up this facade for so long. Months of lies, secret meetings, and flimsy excuses that I had foolishly accepted. They had planned everything so carefully, as if I would be the last person to notice. And I was. Now, with the truth in my hands, I had a difficult decision to make. I could confront them, expose everything, and watch the chaos unfold in our lives. But instead, my mind began to form a plan, something no one expected, not even me. After discovering the betrayal, it felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. It was as if everything I knew, everyone I trusted, had disappeared all at once. I felt isolated, as if the world around me kept moving forward while I was frozen inside. The pain of the betrayal hit me with a force I had never experienced before. It wasn't just my wife who had betrayed me, it was my best friend, someone I considered almost like a brother. The depth of that betrayal was crushing. In the days that followed, my behavior changed drastically. I was emotionally drained, but on the outside, I tried to keep up the appearance of normalcy. Every interaction with my wife felt like a performance. I would look at her and see a stranger, someone I could no longer recognize. It was hard to believe that behind every smile, behind every kind word, she was hiding something so destructive. And with Marcos, the feeling was even worse. When we met, he acted like everything was fine, as if we were still the same friends as always. But I knew the truth, and it ate away at me. I pretended to be distracted during our conversations, but my mind was racing, replaying every message I had read, every word that confirmed just how deeply he had betrayed me. The worst part was that with each passing moment he seemed to convince himself that I would never find out. The emotional pain consumed me, but what truly left me conflicted was the feeling of humiliation. I had been made a fool for so long. They took my trust and turned it into a tool to deceive me. The sense of powerlessness was overwhelming. How did I let this happen? How did I not see it sooner? The moments of anger hit with full force as well. I imagined confrontations, explosive scenes where I would reveal everything all at once. The desire to expose them grew stronger every day, but something inside me held me back from acting impulsively. Part of me wanted to blow it all up, but another part, colder and more calculating, started to see the situation in a different way. I knew that if I simply confronted them right away, the situation would explode, but in a way that might not bring me the peace I was looking for. I could scream, make a scene, destroy the marriage and the friendship. But then what? What would come next? I would only be tearing things apart without finding the emotional closure I so desperately needed. That's when I realized that if I wanted to come out of this with any sense of control, I would need to act carefully. I couldn't let my anger consume me and lead me to make an impulsive decision. I had to find a way to deal with this that would give me some kind of advantage, something that would put the power back in my hands. And then the idea came to me. Instead of blowing up and confronting them directly, I would do something unexpected. After days of dealing with the weight of the betrayal, I came to a conclusion that surprised even me. I didn't just want to confront them and watch the chaos unfold in their lives. No, that would be too simple. I needed something more, something that wouldn't just expose the truth, but also put the control of the situation back in my hands. So, I began to act calmly, as if nothing had changed. I continued pretending that I didn't know anything, living with my wife and Marcos just as I always had. With every conversation, every interaction, I observed them both from a new perspective. I knew that no matter how well they hid it, they both carried the weight of a huge lie. But now, I had the power of information, and they had no idea. First, I decided I needed more proof. The messages I had found were clear, but for what I was planning, I would need more evidence. So, I started quietly monitoring their interactions. Every time they thought I wasn't paying attention, I was. When Anna went out for her so-called commitments, I checked where she was really going. When Marcos made his flimsy excuses, I started cross-referencing information. Slowly, I gathered everything I needed for what was coming next. After weeks of collecting this evidence, I decided it was time to act. But instead of blowing up with an open accusation, I had a more subtle plan. I wanted them to feel the weight of their actions without me having to say a single word. That's when I put into motion what I call my silent revenge. The first step was sending them anonymously the evidence I had collected. I prepared an email containing all the messages, records of their meetings, photos of their outings together, everything carefully documented. Every detail was there, so they could see just how vulnerable they were. When I sent that email to both of them, I made sure it would arrive at the same time. I knew that when they opened it, the reaction would be devastating. I wanted them to know that someone knew what they were doing, without knowing that it was me. I wanted fear to take hold of them, for guilt to start weighing on their shoulders. Meanwhile, I continued with my life, watching from a distance how they would handle the fact that their secret wasn't so secret anymore. The days that followed were filled with tension. I could see that Anna was more nervous than usual, and Marcos, always so confident, now avoided looking me in the eye. They knew something was wrong, but they had no idea I was behind it all. The tension between them was palpable, and slowly, the fake smiles and flimsy excuses started to fall apart. The next step was confronting them, but indirectly. I began asking subtle questions, acting as if I wasn't suspicious. I asked Anna about the places she claimed to have been without accusing her directly. With Marcos, I mentioned things from our past, testing his responses. I knew that both of them were feeling cornered, but the best part was that they didn't know for sure who was behind it all. When I finally decided to expose everything, it was already too late for them. The guilt and fear had already consumed them. They knew the truth was in my hands, and at that moment, I was the only one with the power to decide what would happen next. After weeks of tension, the final moment arrived. I knew the plan had worked when Anna and Marcos began to distance themselves. The messages between them became less frequent, their excuses even more inconsistent, and the nervous atmosphere was evident. They were living under the shadow of their own lies, and the fear of being found out was consuming them. But, contrary to what they believed, the exposure they feared was already happening, slowly and calculatedly, without me having to say a single word. It was on an ordinary night when Anna finally broke the silence. We were sitting at the table and I could feel the tension in the air. She seemed nervous, barely able to look me in the eye. Then, out of nowhere, she confessed. She started talking about the mistakes she had made, trying to justify what was happening between her and Marcos. It was as if she was searching for a way to downplay the seriousness of the betrayal. But I already knew everything. I listened calmly, without raising my voice, without showing the impact her words should have had. "Did you really think I didn't know?" I responded calmly, interrupting her explanations. The shock on her face was undeniable. She didn't expect that I had already been aware of everything. I left her speechless for a few minutes, watching as her attempt to control the situation fell apart. I was in control now. A few days later, it was Marcos's turn. More prideful, it took him longer to realize the game was over. When I finally confronted him, he tried to deny everything, attempting to maintain the same confidence that had always defined him. But with all the evidence I had, he quickly realized there was no escape. His arrogance crumbled, and for the first time I saw an expression on his face that I had never imagined. Fear. At that moment I had the chance to expose everything publicly. I could have destroyed their reputations, ruined their lives once and for all. But instead, I did something unexpected. Contrary to what they had anticipated, I decided to let them live with the weight of their actions. I didn't expose them publicly, didn't create a scene, or spread what had happened to everyone around us. I simply let them face the personal consequences of their betrayal. I knew that what they feared most wasn't the confrontation, but the fact that they would now have to live with the weight of guilt and fear, always wondering if someone else knew. Letting them live with that constant doubt was, to me, the true justice. The revenge I chose was quieter and more devastating than any open confrontation could have been. They had already destroyed what we had, and now it was my turn to move on, knowing that no matter how much they tried to deceive me, I was the one who came out of this with my head held high. In the end, the peace I had been searching for came from the fact that I didn't need to explode to handle the situation. I stayed in control, and that was enough. Today, both my ex-wife and my ex-friend live apart, dealing with their own fragmented lives, while I moved on. The betrayal broke me for a while, but I didn't let it define me. What did I do? I simply let the truth and time take their toll on their lies. And what about you? What would you have done in my place? Would you have exposed everything or acted the same way I did? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe to React Stories and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Here, we always bring stories that will make you think. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, and I'll see you in the next one.